Welcome back to Context Bites, and in today's video we're diving into the impressions question from the WJEC English language exam. If you're also studying Romeo and Juliet, don't miss our dedicated series on the play. And of course, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future content. The impressions question is an excellent opportunity to show how well you can interpret a text. Often 8 to 10 marks, it's definitely worth spending a little time looking at how to approach and answer this type of question. So what do we actually mean by the word impression? Well, it refers to the opinion, the feelings, and the ideas the writer is trying to get across to us as the reader. When you're answering this question, you need to think about both language and structure. And when we talk about language, we're looking at the actual words and techniques the writer uses to shape how we feel. Writers choose language very carefully to build a certain atmosphere or mood. And some of the most common techniques you might spot include similes, metaphors, personification, onomatopoeia, alliteration, imagery and the senses, contrasts and opposites, and allusions. But here's the golden rule. Spotting a technique isn't enough. You always need to explain the effect. Ask yourself, why has the writer used this technique here? And how does it help to create a particular impression? Now let's talk about structure. If language is about the individual words and techniques the writer uses, then structure is about the bigger picture, how the text is organized and built. When you're looking at structure, ask yourself, what do we see first? What changes as the extract goes on? And how does it end? Writers often shape their texts carefully to build mood and create contrasts. And some of the most common structural features you might spot include shifts. This could be a shift in time, a shift in setting, or a shift in character. The extract may use a lot of repetition or dialogue. You might find yourself looking at sentence length and punctuation. Perhaps you can spot a cyclical structure. Maybe there's a flashback involved, or even contrasts where you have sudden changes in tone or perspective. And just like with language, the important part is explaining the effect. Don't just say there's a shift. Explain how that shift makes the reader feel, or what it suggests about the place, the character, or even the event being described. Once you've thought about language and structure, the next step is choosing your quotes. And this is really important because your quotes are the evidence you'll build your whole answer on. Now here's the thing, examiners don't want you copying out huge chunks of text. What they're looking for is short, well-chosen quotes that you can really dig into. I like to think of quotes as lemons. If you pick the right one and squeeze it, you'll get lots of juice, meaning you'll have plenty to analyze. But if you pick a weak quote, you won't have anything to say. So always go for something that's rich in detail, even if it's just 1 or 2 words. Okay, let's take a look at an example extract about Aberporth in Wales. Last summer, I visited the small coastal town of Aberporth in Wales. The air was crisp and salty, carrying the scent of seaweed washed up along the shore. Fishermen worked quietly on their boats, preparing for the day's catch, their movements slow and steady like the ebb and flow of the tide. Children played near the water's edge, their laughter light and carefree, blending with the steady crash of the waves. The town felt peaceful, untouched by the rush of modern life. As the sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the water, the streets grew quieter. The chatter faded, replaced by the gentle whisper of the sea breeze rustling through the narrow lanes. Shops closed their doors, and the scent of fresh bread from the bakery lingered in the cooling air. It was a place that held its own rhythm, a place where time seemed to pause and breathe. And this is the kind of question you might expect to find in the paper. What impression is created of Aberporth? And before you answer the question, you might consider the following. Does it give a positive or negative impression? Does our impression throughout the extract change? And what does the writer want us to feel about Aberporth? For this example, I'll focus on a single quotation to show you the process. But in the exam, you should analyse the extract fully, making sure you cover the beginning, middle, and end of the extract. So let's take a closer look at the following quote. Fishermen worked quietly on their boats. It's only a few words long, but there's a lot we can unpack here about the impression it creates of Aberporth. And the first point we can make is that Aberporth comes across as quite traditional. So let's consider how the quote creates this impression. Well, when I think of fishing, I think of it as a generational job, where skills are passed down through families. And so to me, it suggests the town values heritage and tradition. And it creates the overall impression that Aberporth is rooted in its past. Now we could move on to looking at a second quote, but I feel we can squeeze more out of this one. So my second point is that the fishermen seem to be working in harmony with nature. Now again, I need to consider how my quotation creates this impression. Well, to me, the adverb quietly suggests that there is no noise or chaos, and that the fishermen's movements are therefore calm and unhurried, creating the impression of blending in with the natural world. Furthermore, the fishermen must coexist with the sea, working with it rather than working against it, therefore creating a more harmonious relationship with nature. Now that we've explored the language, let's consider the structure of the extract. Take a look at these two quotes. Can you pick out the structural feature the writer is using here? Did you notice how the extract shifts from day to night? And that shift in time creates the impression of life moving slowly, peacefully, and almost timelessly in Aberporth. And so hopefully you can see that by combining language and structure, we get a much stronger answer. So how do you turn these ideas into a paragraph? We'll start with a clear opening that directly answers the question and avoid being too generic. Have a go at comparing these two openers. The one on the left is too vague, whereas the one on the right is much stronger because it gives specific detail and immediately addresses the question. Next, use short, well-chosen quotes. You don't need to copy large chunks of text. Rather, focus on the parts that best support your point. The bulk of your paragraph should be your analysis. Remember to explain how your quotes prove your point and consider why the writer has used a variety of language and structural techniques. If you're aiming for the higher grades, be perceptive, look for subtle details, make connections between ideas, and consider alternative interpretations. And finally, finish with an overall impression statement. Ask yourself, does the impression change? And what does it tell us about the place, the person, the event, or the situation? So let's go over a few key things to remember when answering an impressions question. Comment on the whole extract, something from the beginning, the middle, and the end. Write about both language and structure. Ask yourself, how does my quote show my point? Build on your analysis, don't just move from quote to quote. And end with an overall impression to tie your ideas together. Now it's your turn. Here's a new extract and a question to have a go at. Drop your answers in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you found today's video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any future lessons. And don't forget to check out our Romeo and Juliet series for even more support with your GCSE English.